Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. I'm Illeagle 86, and as ever, I am joined by Nerdbomber and Techtic, my two favorite co-hosts, and also my only co-hosts. I mean, there's not much competition, but I think if there was, guys would still be my favorites. Picking a favorite amongst the two of you, I'm not going to do, but I'll say the two of you are my favorites. Nerdbomber, who do you think is a better co-host, you or Techtic?
Definitely me, because if we had to do an arm wrestle right here, I would lose. So that means that I'm less focused on my physical acumen and more focused on being a good co-host.
That was like a prepared answer, and I didn't prepare this question, and it also was a very interesting answer. Counterpoint, Techtic, why are you the better co-host?
I am not the better co-host. I would say that Nerdbomber is the better co-host because a good co-host is humble and isn't narcissistic and full of themselves.
Oh, geez. We have a great episode lined up for you guys today here in 2021, second episode of 2021, and some very 2021 news, all positive, I think. Nothing negative here. Of course, we have to talk about this Deadpool 3 news, which broke the day that we're recording this. We have to talk about Nickelodeon the NFL on Nickelodeon. I was going to say Nickelodeon on the NFL, which is also kind of true, but we're going to talk about that whole experience. And of course, we have to talk about Hitman VR, which broke last week. So we're going to start with Deadpool because that seems like I don't want to say the biggest deal. I mean, Nickelodeon's a big deal. Hitman's a big deal. But guys, this is Deadpool 3. This is Deadpool, A, keeping an R rating, B, moving to the MCU. Now, there's a lot to digest here. The facts of it are this. I'll run you through them very quickly. I have an article in front of me from Polygon. This is going to start filming in 2022, which probably means it's not going to happen until late 2022 or 2023 for us. Ryan Reynolds is involved. He is overseeing the script process. Of course, he's going to star. He is not officially writing, I don't think. I'm told that he's quote-unquote overseeing a script, and that's coming straight from Kevin Feige. The writers apparently are from Bob's Burgers, which I've never watched. As I said, Ryan Reynolds is overseeing the process. This, of course, coming because Disney acquired 20th Century Fox, and it became then unclear what was going to happen with X-Men and Deadpool in particular with regards to the MCU. But this is, I guess now, confirmation for us that Deadpool is coming to the MCU, and there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I am a big fan of the Deadpool movies. I believe, at the very least, Techtic is as well. Techtic, I'll turn it over to you in a second. But there's a lot to unpack. I mean, an R-rated MCU movie, for one, even casting aside the Deadpool stuff, is going to be a big move. How Deadpool interacts with the rest of the MCU in the way that he's done most commonly with Wolverine and very briefly with a cameo from the rest of the X-Men in Deadpool 2. There's a lot of potential there for, I don't want to say crossover, but I'm just curious how they're going to handle that. And Techtic, I don't know if you know or if you have a sense of it, or if you want to talk about any other aspect of this, I'll shoot it over in your direction.
So opening him up to the entirety that is the MCU, in my opinion, opens him up to some of the Deadpool duos that we've really known to love, or groups rather. So the first one, obviously, that is probably without question, is Deadpool and Spider-Man. There was the animated Deadpool and Spider-Man Adventures that was fantastic, but what, in my opinion, this opens us up to is introducing also Wolverine into the MCU. I think we've already seen tons of call-outs to Wolverine and various breaking of the third wall when he mentions Wolverine and things like that. So, in my opinion, this is going to segue into that introduction as well.
Not to interrupt you, but do you think they would do that? Because, I mean, Hugh Jackman
it's not going to be Hugh Jackman.
Right, but I mean, the Deadpool references to Wolverine reference the Hugh Jackman version of Wolverine. So, just like from a continuity standpoint, do you think they would do that?
That's the beauty of the breaking of the third wall. It allows them to do that
easily,
and not even skip a beat. He's going to say something like, "Oh, I thought Hugh Jackman was playing you," and people will just accept it, and it'll work perfectly. And that's why I think this is the opportunity to do it. Number one, because of that dichotomy between those two characters, but number two, because they can just slip in a third wall reference and call it a day. And so,
if any, and fourth wall is the term you're looking for, by the way. I do agree that if anything, it's a benefit that Hugh Jackman is going to be gone. Certainly not a benefit for the character of Wolverine, but a benefit for the character of Deadpool, and that's a joke that I could write, right? I mean, the first time Deadpool meets whoever the next Wolverine's going to be, he can look at the camera, break the fourth wall, and say, really, this is who you replaced Hugh Jackman with? That kind of thing. There's infinite possibility there for that. I need to clarify something for myself, though. Wolverine's arc ended. I know Logan was like kind of treated as like extended canon, not really a part of the mainline canon. I loved Logan. To me, unearthing Wolverine when Hugh Jackman played him in like a dozen movies and like gave him a very full arc. I don't know. Like, I get why they would want to unearth him for the MCU, but there's a lot of problems surrounding that to me. Whereas Deadpool is a much less trafficked character, they can get a lot of mileage out of him. The Wolverine reboot, I'm not sure about.
I definitely agree. I feel like it's weird because obviously Hugh Jackman, I mean, Logan was a few years ago now at this point, but it still feels too soon because it's not even like we're talking about Batman where it's rebooted, or even Spider-Man where the same actor only plays Spider-Man up to 3 times before they get the boot and it starts over. Hugh Jackman is literally the face of Wolverine and has been for over a decade and lots of movies.
I mean, the same could be said for Tobey Maguire, but we very quickly accepted Tom Holland.
Right, but
it can be done.
That was
3 movies.
3 movies.
And there was Andrew Garfield in between, for what it's worth. But I get that as a counter argument. But I just, on top of the Hugh Jackman centric complaint, I like the ending they gave to the character in Logan as well. But like, let's talk about the rest of the X-Men for a second, because yes, Deadpool kind of, in the first 2 movies, he's worked on his own, but there's an entire cast of mutants that in theory comes along with him, right? And that raises, like, is this going to be a multiverse thing is my first question.
There's also the X-Force, where he's got his cool white costume. That's another group that he was part of that they could introduce. There's infinite possibilities, and I still think you could do it right with Logan, but I mean, we can move beyond that.
It's a narrative challenge is my point, because when people like Deadpool show up, when people like any of the other X-Men show up in the MCU, the first question that any cognizant audience is going to have is, well, where the heck were these guys for Ultron? Where were these guys for, the attack on New York? Where were these guys for Thanos, of course?
Oh, for sure.
That's when I think the multiverse is going to come in. I mean, we know Spider-Man 3 is going to be ushering in some kind of... not Spider-Man 3, Doctor Strange 2. Although also maybe Spider-Man 3. There's a lot of talk about the multiverse now. It's going to become more of a multiverse. Is this going to be like there's a separate Earth with the X-Men on it and then everyone interacts across Earths? That's a comic book thing, is it?
I think
Techtic, help me out here.
Deadpool was around when Thanos was going on, because he even made a Thanos reference with respect to Cable, because it's the same actor and he broke the fourth wall and made that reference. Yeah,
I think pump the hate brakes, Thanos, I think is what he said, yeah. That's what makes this so interesting, and that's of course why we're talking about it, is I have no doubt that given that Ryan Reynolds is continuing to be involved, given that Kevin Feige is involved, I have absolutely no doubt, especially given the R rating, that this is going to be a success. And I'm sure if they're announcing this and if they're moving forward with it, they have a plan. But it is mind-boggling to consider. I
think Deadpool is going to take place after the events of Thanos. And that's why he can reference it, but wasn't there to fight the bad guys, so to speak.
But I don't want it. This is going to sound super whiny, and I feel like this is like total first world problem thing.
Yes.
But Deadpool felt like this weird little, it was a superhero movie, but not connected to any major universe. Like it was kind of tangentially, but it just was a superhero movie you could go see, and it was kind of self-contained. And I liked that. And I don't want it to be rolled into the MCU. I just don't. I don't care how well they do it. I like my self-contained movie. Leave it.
Here's another example. So I think you're right, first of all. I'm back and forth on this, but I think as far as him showing up after Thanos, and if anyone can provide an explanation for where were you when Thanos happened, it's Deadpool, because he can do it in a very tongue-in-cheek way. He can do it in a way that the audience will laugh and then forget. Whereas with the rest of the X-Men, that's going to be a major problem. That's one thing that you can kind of write off. But another scenario that I foresee, think about Endgame for a second. Think about the scene that everyone's going to remember, the scene where all the portals open. Spoiler alert, but I mean, if you haven't seen Endgame at this point, what the hell are you doing? All the portals open and all these heroes come through and they get their little moment on camera. They get to show off some fight moves, whatever. They get a couple of lines. If you put Deadpool in a scene like that, assuming there's going to be another iteration of the Avengers, assuming it's this tent pole where all these characters show up, he's going to have to show up in a way that neuters him. That's just a fact based on, MPAA constraints. They're going to want to make movies that are applicable to everyone. They're not going to want Avengers Endgame 2 to be rated R. So what do you do? It is an interesting question. I think there's a lot of potential. I think they could do this in exactly the right way. But that moment, not to any fault of Ryan Reynolds or anyone involved in Deadpool itself, is going to feel strange. Techtic, do you understand what I'm saying?
He's not going to be able to be his full personality as they progress. This is going to be an introductory, and maybe yes, maybe no, right? Maybe this is going to introduce him, but segue him off into his own thing again, because he can do that. I liked your analogy of leverage the alternate universes to introduce him and then just say, okay, see ya, do your thing.
Take him away. Yeah, and you know, I don't want to act like it's an insurmountable problem. They can certainly put him in an Avengers movie and he can show up and say, they told me I'm not allowed to swear. I'm like, being able to break the fourth wall is an incredible crutch for writing that character, right? Because if there's anything the character should do and normally would do and can't do, they're allowed to turn to the audience and say, I can't do this because Kevin Feige told me not to, or, you know, something like that. So, and that could get a laugh or two. And then when he gets back to his movie, he can say, all right, I'm glad all that crap is over. You know, F this, F that, whatever other crap he wants to say. You know, which has me circling back to this is a good idea. But I do understand what you're saying, Nerdbomber, which is Deadpool and Deadpool 2 had a very good thing going. And it's important to remember that they were, you know, he even said, I'm going to go be over here without the X-Men for the most part. And X-Force did crop up in Deadpool 2, but like he was even separate from that ecosystem. So to now put him into a bigger one it's a move for sure. I don't know. I'm back and forth on this. One thing I am hoping is that Domino comes back, because I love Domino in Deadpool 2. I would love to see her involved in whatever the character does next. And she was like, because Techtic, you mentioned X-Force. She was a part of that was X-Force, right? In Deadpool 2. I don't really remember too well.
It wasn't the traditional X-Force, but it was kind of their own X-Force. But the other thing that I want to mention with regards to him and his teams, quote unquote, is at his heart, he's not a hero. He's a mercenary. He does what he does. So he doesn't even need to be in a different dimension, or he could be in his own place, and then he's just going to be like, guys, I'm bound. I'm not doing this one. You're on your own. Because he's just an asshole. That's him.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point, too. And that's been explored in the first two movies to a very limited extent. I think especially in Deadpool 2, he was very, especially at the beginning, he wasn't super invested. He was basically just saying, okay, I'm going to be here in my corner. They can figure this out. But then he was kind of forced into it. And yeah, that could be an interesting dynamic to be brought to the MCU, where typically everyone's just a good guy who wants to do good things. I don't know. I feel like it's a net positive thing for the MCU. I also understand what you're saying, though, Nerdbomber. You know, I think I said that before, but it's very appealing to keep him in his bubble where, you know, even X-Men wasn't really touching him. They had a great thing going. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Mm-hmm. There's not much more to say on it. I mean, anything else to add before we move on? I mean, it's just, you know, we're going to talk about this again, I have no doubt.
No, I mean, I'm just, like I said, and I don't want to harp on how bad that is a decision I think this is, but I do think it is, because I feel like he's going to get lost in the crowd. Deadpool kind of stood alone. He was almost like the anti-MCU portion of Marvel movies. And there's so many different characters to keep track of, and I feel like he's just going to get caught in the mud. And that's not a saying at all. Caught in the mud is not a saying. I just made that up, but it's going to happen to him. He's going to squelch around in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to hinge on the multiverse, right? I think given how many characters already exist in the MCU and how many more they're looking to add, how they do things with the multiverse is going to be absolutely critical. And it's clear that that's the linchpin of their plan. I mean, we've heard it mentioned in direct response to at least two movies on their upcoming slate, Doctor Strange and Spider-Man 3. So, you know, how they do that's going to be critically important. I don't know what exactly their plan is. I'm sure we won't know for a while, if ever, until the first of those movies comes out. But I think it's just the latest that I think, you know, the multiverse really comes in is with how they're going to handle Deadpool. So we will see. But in the meantime, of course, we live in a land of speculation. Nerdbomber's not feeling it. Techtic, it sounds like, is feeling it. I feel like I am
felt by it.
You're felt by it. I'm pretty lukewarm on it, but this is the land of takes, the Twitter sphere is. So head on over to Twitter, hit us up at OnlineWarriors1, at OWLegal86, at OWTechtic, at OWNerdBomber. Let us know, are you pro Deadpool in the MCU? Are you anti-Deadpool in the MCU? Or are you kind of indifferent? Do you not like the MCU? Do you not like anything? Do you not like Deadpool? What do you like? Just anything. Just tell us.
I like cheese and turtles.
We should talk about cheese. We should probably have an entire episode devoted to cheese at some point.
And turtles.
It's not this episode. Turtles, I don't know if I could talk about for an hour, but with you two, I could probably talk about anything for an hour. So maybe we'll test it. That might be a secret segment at the very least. Either way.
Yeah, take a
hit us up on
subject
Twitter.
and see how long we can milk it.
Yeah. Can you milk a turtle? You probably can. Well,
feel
no,
like
they're
you
not
can-
mammals.
You
You can milk
when you
anything,
nibble.
right?
Not a turtle, though, because they lay eggs.
Yeah, they're not mammals. I think for you to be able to milk something, it has to be a mammalian, but you can also milk nuts. So, because they have like almond milk, and I still don't really know how that's done. They have hemp milk. Anyways, talk to us about milk on Twitter. I don't know. Talk to us about whatever you want. This started with Deadpool, but it's ending with hemp milk. So that's how this show goes sometimes. Let's talk about the NFL. And first of all, special announcement for the listeners. Nerdbomber and Techtic and I are in a weekly fantasy league where we draft players and compete to see who has the highest score every week, and the winner gets $4. Just, as it were. Ask us on Twitter or just aloud to yourself right now. Ask who won this week. It was me. It was me. I did win a rare blaze of glory. So I just wanted to toot my horn there for a second. But it's playoff time. More importantly, fantasy football aside, it's playoff time. Teams are living and dying by the wins and losses in this stage of the season. And whether or not you're a big football fan, something interesting happened this weekend in that the NFL decided, in conjunction with CBS and Viacom, to broadcast one of its games on Nickelodeon. And I did not watch, I watched chunks of this game, but I watched it on CBS with the Romo Nance broadcast team. I did not watch the Nickelodeon broadcast. I have seen some highlights from it. I've heard nothing but good things about it, to be perfectly honest with you. Both from children and adults, for what it's worth. Like, I actually think that... So first of all, did you guys watch the Nickelodeon broadcast at all?
I did, yeah, and it was phenomenal.
I honestly thought it was our cable provider messing up.
I've seen highlights, and, if you're wondering what we're talking about, when players scored touchdowns, there were these, large digital, they weren't real, but slime cannons just shooting into the end zone, shooting digital slime into the end zone, superimposed on the field. There was exclamation points over Drew Brees' head, and young Sheldon explained
That was the best part.
It was, it might not have been the best thing Nickelodeon has ever done, but it was the most thing Nickelodeon has ever done. I mean, in terms of throwing child-oriented production value at it, based on what I saw, they knocked it out of the park. And I also heard that Nate Burleson was phenomenal.
Let me expand on what they had young Sheldon doing exactly. He wasn't the actual announcer of the game. He was who they called in to analyze the specifics and penalties and things like that, similar to what happens on an actual NFL game, which, I mean, this was an actual NFL game, but it was fantastic that they replaced, what's his name?
Gene Steratore?
Gene Steratore with young Sheldon. I thought that was just an amazing decision.
And it's for me, it's an exercise in brinksmanship, because I think 99% of the time when people hear young Sheldon or hear about young Sheldon, they're not into it, right? I don't know how that show is still on, because I've heard nothing but bad things about young Sheldon. I'm just going to throw that out there. But they used him in the right way. And the uprights, when they were kicking field goals, there was a big giant SpongeBob in the middle of the upright. They went all out with the SpongeBob references. They went all out with it was geared towards a younger audience. And I think that's really cool. And I think this is not the last we've seen of it.
I hope this isn't the last. This is one of those things where when I was a young kid and I was a young football fan, I was definitely at the mercy of my dad and my brother and sister teaching me what I was seeing. And let's be real, football is a kind of confusing sport. If you are not familiar with American football, there is a lot of, each flag, if you don't understand the nuance of what's happening, it doesn't really make sense to you. And the fact that they were able to present it in such a way to kids that was easily understood and made it fun, I think it's great. And yeah, it's all kind of a marketing ploy, but who cares? It was fun. I liked it.
It's a gate-kept sport, right? There's a high barrier to entry, I would say, with football. In terms of, I grew up with football. I've been a football fan my whole life. I was raised in a football family, so I understand watching it. But I can imagine watching the first game, there's a lot being thrown at you at once. So, to create an entry-level kind of thing like this Nickelodeon broadcast, where they're not just color commentating the game and showing you what happens, but they're also telling you, this is what this is what that is. When it's necessary, here's some historical context. It's a brilliant idea. And I was glad to hear that it was a success. I do like Nate Burleson, and I've heard really, especially sterling things about his work in the broadcast booth. But I do want to mention, I don't want to call it a gaffe, because that's not what it was. It was well intended by everybody. but they put on a poll online to choose what they were calling the MVP, which is the Nickelodeon version of the MVP, Most Valuable Player. And there was this little trophy with like the Nickelodeon blimp on top of a slime tower they were going to give to the winner. And the winner was Mitch Trubisky. And they also, when they announced him as the winner, they pronounced his name wrong. I don't know if you saw that clip.
No, I didn't see. I didn't notice that they pronounced his name wrong.
They called him Mick Trubisky, which like, oh, sorry. It's really funny. Poor kid probably didn't know what the guy's name was, but that was kind of a gaffe on their part. Never leave such an important award and don't leave that up to people online, because it was probably a bunch of 30-year-olds like me. Not that I would do this, but probably a bunch of 30-year-olds being like, it'd be hilarious if the losing quarterback, who frankly didn't play very well, won the MVP award, this new MVP award they're giving out. So that's kind of funny. But I mean, Sean Payton, the winning coach, got slimed. That was cool. Like actual slime, not digital slime. It just seems like a really cool thing. And I think, Nerdbomber, I know you're a hockey fan. I saw someone comment, other sports should be doing this. And I think the NHL in particular is looking for any network to, have their games on and let people watch the games.
Oh, absolutely. I think this would be a great way to get more people involved and just make it more fun. I mean, baseball is the number one sport in America, I think, still technically, but there's ways to make, and I'm a baseball fan and I played softball growing up, but I love going to games. I cannot for the life of me watch on television. I can't do it. It's so boring. And
I really think golf is more interesting. I'm sorry if you're a baseball fan, but watching baseball on television, golf is more interesting because golf, like,
you're watching a bunch of guys standing around whacking a ball. Come on.
Hey,
even the announcers have to stay nice and quiet. Have either of you ever played golf?
It's hard.
The most impossible sport. Like baseball, I get that it's hard, but like baseball, like a lot of the guys like aren't even really in shape and like they're just swinging at a ball. Golf is like, you have to like understand like wind and like Coriolis effect, like all this crazy stuff, and like it's still just like incredibly hard. So like I don't know, I have more respect for that. I think it's more interesting to watch having played it. But anyway, we're getting away from the point. But I would think most major league sports would want to get in on this thing the NFL is pioneering, which is put the sports on younger networks so younger people get more involved in the sport and get into the sport. And
the problem is cable providers would ruin that, because hockey's a great example, right? Is that ever on Fox or CBS or any of those channels?
No, it's on NBC.
I thought it was always on MSN.
MSG, I think is what you're thinking of.
MSG is a regional network, though.
It is a regional network. And Nerdbomber, correct me if I'm wrong, NBC does play hockey games, right? Like specifically during the playoffs, I think, but they do it.
Yeah, they will. It's usually just during the playoffs, but they do have it on like MSNBC, or not MSNBC, NBC Sports. Now you've got me putting an M in front. On the financial version of NBC, they play a lot of hockey games.
They're cutting out. MSNBC is that you're thinking of CNBC. MSNBC is like Rachel Maddow. That's like
it's like
NBCSN,
NBC Sports Network.
Yeah. I do think that there's a world. I don't know what point you were getting at, Techtic, with the Fox and CBS point. I mean, I would think. I don't know how the business arrangement works. I don't know if NFL went to Nickelodeon and was like, "We will pay you to put this on your network." I doubt that's how it went. If anything, I bet Nick probably went to them and said, "We want to show a sports game." It probably got more people to watch Nickelodeon because, again, I think there were probably a lot of looky-loos who are like our age who are like, "I want to see what this is all about," and then they stuck around because it was genuinely entertaining. I don't know. It's a very interesting thing. I think it was worth us mentioning that. I think we all thought that it was pretty cool. But yeah, NFL and Nickelodeon, consider it a successful experiment, I would say. So we're going to move on to our final piece of news. But before we do, we're going to take our break. And of course, before we take our break, I would be remiss.
I got to put that on a t-shirt or something, man.
That should be and by the way, we do have new merch. I don't know if am I allowed to shout that out on the air?
Absolutely. Why not?
We have new t-shirts, guys. We'll put some info on Twitter. I think we probably already have. But if we didn't, we'll put it out there. We should get some t-shirts that say I would be remiss and see if anyone buys them. But
if you want a t-shirt that for Techtic, it should say DIY. Let's get right into it. And then Nerdbomber's slogan is...
Do I have a slogan?
That's a
ahead,
weird
Nerdbomber.
slogan.
Tell us what your slogan is.
I honestly, I don't know. Do I have a slogan?
That's it. It's a picture of you going, do I even have a slogan?
I think I want your slogan to be intellectual observer. Or no, sorry, observer/intellectual from the...
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a deep cut, but that was from a few episodes back when we had Ben on the show. So I'm trying to shout out Ben here. That's what I started, and I got stopped because I said I'd be remiss. But our good friend Ben Checkness has been a producer for the show for a while now, and as a result, he gets access to the monthly secret segment, he gets access to the monthly vlog, and of course, he gets this producer shout out and input into our game segment, as well as the occasional guest spot. And Ben gets all of these things because he is a producer on the show and he supports us on the night level of our Patreon, which is the topmost of the 3 levels. There's also a Squire level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and there's also the page, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. If you want more of the details on that, if you want to get back to the show, if you like what you're listening to, first of all, thanks for being here. Second of all, we would super appreciate any support. It helps us to continue doing what we do, bringing you content. You can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast for more of the details. Thanks again to Ben. I would be remiss if I did not shout him out. We're going to head to a break now, shout out a sponsor, and we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about the news. Specifically, we're going to talk about Hitman VR. So we'll be back in a few.
Today's episode is brought to you by Kind Bar. Kind is deeply committed to crafting food with real, recognizable ingredients. A disruptive notion that sparked the creation of a new healthy snacking category. Kind is unapologetic in their efforts to challenge the status quo, to shift the food industry and empower their community and our listeners to make better, informed choices about health. Kindness can be a transformative force for good, and that is why we are teaming up with Kind and Podgo to bring our listeners 10 or 15% off for military, teachers, students, first responders, doctors, and nurses. Go to podgo.co/kind. That's podgo.co/kind. Kind Bar, creating a kinder and healthier world. One act, one snack at a time.
All right, we're back to talk about Hitman VR. Now, specifically, we're talking about Hitman PSVR because this was just announced. So Hitman 3 is going to have VR capability, essentially, is what the announcement was. And they announced it in the form of a trailer. Will be coming to, before anyone asks, will be coming to Steam and PC in 2022. But Hitman 3 is set to be released January 20th. That is less than a couple weeks. Well, it's basically a couple weeks away. We should talk about this trailer. So the funniest thing about this trailer by far, and the trailer's not designed to be funny, but...
The piano.
The piano was funny, but I think the funniest thing about it was the very first thing they show you doing in VR is just wiping a counter with a rag. It's like this is
wax
Hitman.
on, wax off. You gotta do what you gotta do, man. Find that inner peace.
It's not long until you put the rag down, pick up a knife, and get down to business. But I thought that was a funny way to start. But there's a lot. I mean,
the funniest thing I thought was the squiggly limbs on one of the guys he took down. And the guy that had virtually no bone structure.
Well, there was also the guy, it might be the same guy, but there was the guy who he shot him and he very, very slowly fell off a cliff. The ragdoll physics in this game are pretty special, but
yeah, I'm here for
there was a lot, there was him tapping the guy on the shoulder and the guy turns around, he just punches him in the face. It's like, all right, you didn't need to tap him on the shoulder, you could just punch him in the back of the head.
But it puts emphasis on it.
It looks so fun. It looks funny and it looks fun. And I have to applaud, I think this is IOI, the people who make Hitman. I've never played a Hitman game. We talked about Hitman a while back, not that long ago on the show. I applaud, graphically speaking, this does not look like the most polished thing in the world.
It looks like a PlayStation game.
Yeah, like it doesn't even support move controllers. It looks like it's fairly bare bones in terms of like graphical immersion.
Wait, I didn't see that it didn't support move controllers.
I have that in front of me on Upload VR.
Oh.
It doesn't support move controllers. It's going to use the motion capture for the DualShock for everything.
Interesting.
It doesn't have move support yet. They might add it for all I know.
That's kind of a big deal for me though. So I was super hyped about this entire thing, but the move controllers was kind of a big, when I think about playing Super Hot VR, part of what makes it awesome is the fact that you have hand motion and you can move your hands, like crouch and do crazy things, and your hands move independently. And it was the same thing with is it London Heist? The Mafia game that was on the demo disc.
Well, there's another one that I've been meaning to buy, Blood and Truth, which I haven't bought yet. Haven't played London Heist either. First of all, Super Hot VR. If you haven't played that, if you have a PSVR and you haven't played that, stop listening right now. I don't even care. Stop listening and go buy it and play it. It's worth any amount of money. Fantastic game. one of the better shooting games I played on the VR. The only other contender is Farpoint VR, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, doesn't look like the most graphically accomplished game. It doesn't, like you said, the move controller, the lack of move controller support might be a big factor for a lot of people, and understandably so. But I really appreciate, it looks like, based on the way this looked like it played, there was a definitive sacrifice of those kind of things for, we're just going to have a lot of fun with this. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks very bare. I mean, think about how much fun you have playing, I'm playing, Super Mario Sunshine right now on the Switch, which, it doesn't have the best like polygons or whatever, but guess what? I'm having a hell of a time. So that sort of thing doesn't always matter. And maybe they didn't embrace that as fully as I'm implying, but it just kind of seems like they were like, we're going to add VR support and, we don't have the manpower, but we're going to make it really fun. And, the rough edges aren't going to matter as much. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that was my overarching take on it is, I don't even like Hitman, but I would certainly buy this and play it just because it looks like a fun...
Yeah, the graphics weren't a showstopper for me. It's more, I agree with Nerdbomber, that the move controllers are something that makes me take pause.
But I mean, I'm sure it would kind of be fun anyway. It's one of those things where I would rather go out and buy Blood and Truth, which I have not bought or played yet either, before I play this, just because the move controller thing is, I feel, very critical. I feel like part of the immersion with VR, like the graphics don't really bother me because, like we said, Super Hot was fun, and that's literally...
It's just black and white people.
Yeah.
Red people.
And they're literally polygons. Like the graphics are literally polygons. It is not a polished... Like the graphics are not like photorealistic whatsoever. And that was a blast. And I think part of that is because you really felt immersed physically, from a physical standpoint. Your physical actions were relayed on the screen. So that's going to be my major hang up. That said, though, I think this looks like a heckin' blast, and I want to play it. And I don't use my PSVR enough, and I want to.
VR is an interesting design space as a video game designer, I imagine, because given how much, just the sheer amount of visuals that you need to render, people can look in 360 degrees. You probably have to sacrifice graphical quality, right? I can't think off the top of my head what the most graphically polished VR game I've played is, but frankly, it shouldn't matter.
It's probably not the 360 degrees that would sacrifice graphics. It's probably more, you're not only trying to render things, but you're trying to render things around image that's captured and trying to minimize latency. So it's probably...
Right.
In order to minimize latency, they're reducing the graphical quality.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because you have
the
ray tracing.
Yeah, we know technical terms here on the show. Yeah, I mean, I do think that gameplay should take a front seat. And my recent VR perspective, by the way, is I'm also playing Star Wars Squadrons, which is kind of a different thing. In that sense, having a DualShock makes a lot more sense than having a move controller. So you don't feel pulled out of it using a DualShock. And if anything, you feel pulled into it using a DualShock controller because you're just steering a ship, right? But I can imagine, again, given my experience with Farpoint VR, where I used actually the full like rifle controller, and then Super Hot where I used the move controllers, I can see you losing a bit by only being able to use the DualShock controller.
Well, especially like when you think about when you're an assassin, I feel like a Hitman type controls is probably really similar to Super Hot, because with one hand, like you could open a door and with the other, like stab a guy in the neck or something. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's a lot of different two-handed abilities that you could pull off that would be super fun to do in VR.
The move controllers they look ridiculous, but they're a pretty good design, right? Because the other thing about them is, think about how many times in this trailer you see someone punch somebody. You see the guy punching somebody. Imagine punching someone with the move controller. You're probably just holding down the trigger and waving it like a wand, right? Now imagine doing that with a regular controller. You will look and feel like a moron. Like, right? I mean, I don't know if that's... I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. It sounds like I was. It sounds like neither of you knew, and I have the article in front of me saying that it's not going to have move controller support. Nonetheless, I still think it looks really cool.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Pending the price point, again, I'm not a Hitman fan by any means, haven't played any of the games, but pending the price point, it's certainly something I could see myself having a good time with.
So I don't want to like get us off track or anything, but one of the things, and I feel like we don't talk about PSVR enough, considering we all have PSVR and the entry point, and I know there's the Oculus Quest 2. The wireless Quest is out there that you don't need a computer, and it's only $299, and I get that, and it's out there, but you can't play all of the games, and the library is a lot I don't know if it's a lot smaller, but it's a little bit smaller than the PSVR. The PSVR just has a bunch of good titles. And I feel like we don't talk about how awesome it is enough. But I will say, since we talked about football today and we're talking about PSVR, there is a really cheap football game that I think you should check out. Well, wow,
Really?
It's not really not cheap anymore, but it used to be when I bought it. But it's called 2MD VR Football, and you are playing against a bunch of pylons dressed up as football players, and they come at you, and you are the quarterback, and you get to like draw up plays, and you literally are in the quarterback's helmet tossing footballs, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely, I know this is like not news or anything like that, and we're in no way sponsored by this game, but if you like football, I mean, you're not going to stand there and play it for a really long time, but I think I paid $2.99 for the game, and it was a lot of fun, and I almost broke a Move controller hitting it against the ceiling. So
I would play. So you were throwing a football and your follow through, you hit the ceiling.
oh yeah.
I mean, it's full disclosure. It's $12.99 now. I just looked it up. I would play anything for $2.99. First of all, I feel like that's something I have to say. I would play pretty much anything if it cost $2.99. I did not know about this, and I think it's a perfectly valid. It's good show content for any PSVR listeners out there, but also just for my own benefit. I might check this out. I have a significant enough game backlog, but this is kind of a different thing, right? This is kind of just you go and you dick around, and that's like getting back to the Hitman thing. That's kind of what this is too, right? Like I would use this Hitman thing. It can't take itself too seriously, right? I think a lot of VR can't take itself too seriously. You have to have this mindset of I'm going to go in here and I'm going to dick around because that's what VR is good for. I think in a lot of senses. Because
especially when you think about, so like I have a problem where I do get motion sick, and I don't really get motion sick in like cars or anything like that, but in VR I will get motion sick. And especially if it's like free walking. That's another thing that I was actually wondering how Hitman is going to pull off, because one of the things that game devs do for VR is they have transportation, so that you don't have that feeling, because when you're in VR, your body gets really weirded out and your brain gets weirded out when your body's not actually moving in real life, but it sees you
it seems like
walking,
you are, yeah.
And it seems like you are. And that's one of the things that throws me off the most and gets me really feeling nauseous and sick. And a lot of what the Hitman trailer looked like was that free motion walk around, and I feel like that would nauseate the crap out of me. And teleportation, I'm interested to see if they're going to implement that or make that a setting at all too, because that's kind of important. But that said, I think these small bite-sized experiences like 2MD and the things that you go in and, to quote Illeagle, you just dick around in, it's better because shorter chunks of time, you tend to not get sick as easily because you're only playing for like half an hour. You're not in there for an extended period where then you're going to come out and feel super nauseated.
See, it's so funny. As far as the teleportation thing goes, I have to disagree. Like, if you get motion sick from it, obviously you have no choice. But first of all, don't play Farpoint as much as I just recommended it. Farpoint, you're walking around, so you'd have a hard time.
They don't have teleportation options in it?
I'd have to check. I don't think so. But my experience with the teleportation is Doom VFR. You pretty much you don't have to use the teleportation, but they pretty much force you to. And it's really rough on me. Like Doom is the VR game I have that I could probably handle playing for the least amount of time, because that teleporting around actually makes it worse for me. It's probably different strokes for different folks.
Well, I feel like that's got to be so fast because so many enemies are coming at you. Like you probably don't have time to sit still before you have to teleport to the next area.
It's not well suited for the combat. Yeah, it's Doom had a tricky task in front of them in terms of making their game VR playable, and they did a decent job. And it's very difficult, though. I will say that it's also very hard, and maybe it is hard because of the teleportation. But that's interesting. You feel that way. Before we move on, I just want to make one final note about VR. I said dicking around. In order to dick around, guys, you don't need to be a dick. You also don't need to have a dick. I just want to
writing that down.
Public service announcement. Write that down, everyone at home. Tell your kids. Tell your wife. Tell anybody. We're going to move on now to what are you up to Wednesday. I'm going to go first because I have a hefty slate of things. First of all, Techtic Nerdbomber, did you guys watch Defending Jacob? I feel like you might have talked about it.
Oh, yeah, we did.
We did. He did.
No spoilers. I'm like, I don't know how many episodes there are, but I'm like 4 episodes in. Very into it. Really enjoying it so far. It's exactly the kind of show that Hayes and I like. So really getting into that. We watched Queen's Gambit in like 3 days or something. I don't know how long it was exactly. It was really good. I have to say, I was bummed out, and it got a lot less interesting when I learned that it wasn't a true story. Because for a decent chunk of time, I thought it was a true story. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And then when I learned it wasn't, I was like, oh, okay, well, now it's just someone telling a story. I don't know. That kind of took away from it for me. It's still really good. It's top notch. You should watch it if you haven't. It reminded me that I wish I was really good at chess. It's one of those things. It's like chess and card magic are two things that I just like, man, I wish I was good at that. It just seems
You
like
wanted
such a
to
cool
be a
thing
magician?
to be good at. Yes. I frankly still do want to be a magician. I think it's one of the coolest things in the world when like America's Got Talent has all the magicians on.
Are you the kind of person that watches any kind of show ever and you see someone that's good at something, you're like, man, I want to be that guy, no matter what it is? I'm incredibly impressionable, I've found. I now currently want to be really good at karate.
I don't know. So we're going to talk about karate later, actually. I don't know if I would go that far with myself, but there's certain things, and chess is definitely one of them. So like watching that show, I was like, man, like and they're very accurate with how they portray chess. They talk about specific moves and defenses and all these things. And it's very like, there's parts of it that are very textbook. You're kind of learning about chess. And it reminded me that A, I used to like playing chess. I own a chess set, like I know how to play. And B, I wish I was really good at it. So that was something that happened. Those are a couple of things. The other thing is that I managed 120 stars in Super Mario 64. So I am now on to Super Mario Sunshine, which I'm finding is a lot harder. And I was having a hard enough time with Mario 64. Techtic, I know you're a Sunshine stan, if I remember correctly. Did you ever 100% this game, or did you beat it even?
I believe I told you this, that all of my Super Mario Sunshine playing was at a friend's house. So it was impossible for me to 100% it.
I'm trying to think. Someone told me that Super Mario Sunshine is like one of their number ones. I know we talked about Sonic last week, so it must not have been you. But I'm working through that right now.
It is my favorite of the Mario games.
Oh, you almost said it.
You said it before, too, and I let it slide.
It's just
Mario.
how he says it. He goes, it's a me, Mario.
Okay, I'm gonna swing it over to you for your update because you earned it.
Okay, so the biggest update for me and why I want to be really good at karate is because we started watching Cobra Kai on Netflix, and surprisingly fantastic. And Danny LaRusso, I'm sorry, he's a jerk now. There, I said it. It's done. And
wow.
Honestly, thought he was kind of a jerk then, too. Mr. Miyagi was always trying to set him straight. Now he doesn't have Mr. Miyagi anymore, and the jerk side is a showing. But it's a fantastic show. I keep saying, man, I want certain characters, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. I keep wanting certain characters to do certain things, and I know that their plan is to make the original bad guy, Lawrence is his name, or Sensei Lawrence is what I'll call him now. Their goal is to make him good and probably become friends with Daniel LaRusso, and that's very obviously written on the walls, but they keep doing other things, and it's like, you ever watch one of those shows where all of their problems could have been solved and it would have been 0% dramatic if they just talked for 6 seconds?
Well, Defending Jacob has shades of that. And again, don't spoil me, but it's one of those shows that
The Knife,
as I watch
right?
it. Well, The Knife, and it's just every time they do the wife, the last episode I watched, this isn't a spoiler, but the last episode I watched, they're, if you know anything about the show, you know that the son gets accused of murder, and that's the whole premise. And as a result, the son and the wife and the husband are they're staying at home. The husband's on paid leave, and this wife decides the day after their garage door got spray painted Rotten Hell Murderer, I'm going to go for a run by myself to the park where my son was accused of committing a murder. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would characters on that show do half things? And this is what makes it so fun to watch, by the way, is because you can say to the person you're watching with or to the TV if you're watching alone, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense for you to do that. Anyways.
I hope that you watch Cobra Kai, because this is I can kind of understand that they in that situation she just wanted it to clear her head, and for me going for a walk is how I do it too. So I get that, but a lot of these fights are literally not necessary, and it's oh, let me talk to you for 6 seconds instead of just going, hey dipshit. That's how all conversations open, and it's not you're adults, guys, come on. And that's my one complaint. But otherwise, it's a solid show. It makes me want to take up karate. I'm super here for it. It's been 2 days since we started watching it, and we're already midway through season 2. We are crushing it.
And season 3 is on the way soon, right?
Season 3 just released, actually.
Just released. Okay, yeah. Is Mr. Miyagi dead?
Yeah.
Like the character and the actor, are they both dead?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the actor passed because I think in the first or second episode, they actually do a nice little tribute to him in the
Passed in
pre-credits.
2005.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he was an old dude, so that makes sense. Yeah, the show looks interesting to me. I was never a big Karate Kid fan, but I also feel like you probably don't have to be.
Did you ever do karate, little kid karate as a kid?
No, but my best friend did.
I had a white belt with 2 yellow stripes on it.
So my best friend was really into it. I never really understood it. Never understood why he was so into it. It just seemed like a lot of work for not a lot of reward. But look, we're going to talk about karate in a bit because that's the quiz topic for today. So I'm going to stop talking about karate and Techtic, if you're all set, we'll move to Nerdbomber. But I don't know if I don't want to cut you short.
I'm all set.
All right. So for me, I watched a lot of Cobra Kai. And I also started playing a new board game that I got, which is the next installation in the DC deck building game. It's called Dark Knight Metal, and it's really, really good. So I'm a big DC deck building game fan, and I think we own every single iteration of this game. And essentially each iteration of the game, it either adds new starter hero character cards, which each have individual perks, or there's just new power-up sort of things. And this one's a little bit interesting because it allows you to have multiple hero character cards, and that allows you to stack up multiple different perks to help you build your deck. And I think this is probably the most well-balanced version of the DC deck building game that we have played so far. And it is so much fun. We're really having a good time with it. Big fan.
So I kind of want to expand on that. Each one of these character cards has abilities that give you your own perks to beat your opponent in this game. And typically some are more overpowered than others, but the game mechanic in this installment allows your superhero that you're playing as to get captured, and you would get a different one at random. And so you get Aquaman I find to be incredibly overpowered, and I've gotten him twice now and beat Nerdbomber twice now playing this game, but she had every opportunity to hit me with what are called weaknesses to make my character get captured so that I don't have his ability anymore. She just wasn't, skilled enough to make that happen.
Gosh.
Wow.
So okay, just a couple clarifying questions. You're playing against each other. This is not you're playing against us.
You're playing against each other to capture more villains.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's actually interesting. I forgot to mention another update for me. I started playing the Lord of the Rings Legacy card game, which I'm playing it solo against, you're playing against yourself, kind of. You're playing against scenarios with encounters in them that you build a deck to try and essentially quest your way through it. And it's similar. There's heroes with perks and certain things. It's captivating. So I'm into the card games. I might have to get into this DC deck building game. I've also heard the Marvel game is really good for this. It seems like there's a lot of these card games around.
See, the Marvel game, we've played the Marvel game, and it was good, but I think I like the DC deck building game a little bit more just because the setup and the playtime is a little bit, not that faster is necessarily better, but it's easier to set up. It's a little less convoluted, more straightforward. I would say it plays more like a classical deck building game than the Marvel version. The Marvel version just has a little bit more going on, which, I mean, it's good. It differentiates itself from other deck building games, but I personally, I just like to be able to pick up and get into a game pretty quickly without a lot of setup.
Well, so I think the reason I heard about the Marvel game and the reason I bought the Lord of the Rings game, Hayes isn't into those, so I do those solo. And I don't think DC has a solo mode. I know Marvel does. Obviously, Lord of the Rings does. So that's kind of where
I think
I'm coming from.
You might be able to play solo, but I can't remember which iteration it is offhand. We've got a stack of 7 of these, so I'll have to look through the boxes because I know there's one that does have a solo mode, but it's not the primary method of gameplay.
Yeah, I'll stop hijacking your update, but I've been really into solo games a lot the past few weeks. I'm gonna have to talk about that more in depth next week when I don't jam my update with other stuff. But DC Deck Builder, right on.
Yeah. So then the other thing I mentioned, I was reading a book, and the book that I actually just finished up is called The Space Between Worlds. And this is a sci-fi type fantasy book. It was actually one of the books listed, I believe, in the Goodreads end of year nominations for the best books of 2020. And the I really enjoyed reading it. It was a really interesting idea talking about, we talk about like multiverses and stuff all the time with all of these different comic book and fictional universes out there. And this basically explored a multiverse, but what would happen if one of the worlds had developed the technology to go into other dimensions and other worlds and basically send people and kind of corporatize finding information. So they would go to other worlds and say like, oh, like the progression of a disease or the progression of specific like global warming or something like that. And they would be able to bring that data back and compare to see how the Earth Zero kind of thing compared to the rest of the universes out there. But the only way that the people can traverse to different worlds is if they're dead on other worlds. So this book basically is told from the perspective of someone who is a traverser and jumps from world to world, but is not a native inhabitant of Earth Zero. The Earth Zero counterpart came to her world, was a double, so got killed on entry, and then she took the technology and basically took over that life on Earth Zero. And it was a really interesting read. It gets really into different little like political alliances, and it was a kind of like a thrilling sci-fi
Sounds like
type
season
read.
4 of Mr. Robot, kinda.
But no.
Immediately walks it back.
I'm
Kinda.
just gonna say no.
You really burn through books, don't you?
I read about like 30 books a year. So
yes, you do.
I would say
good
usually
grade.
the summertime is when I go through more books, but when I have like downtime around holidays, I'll churn through books a lot. But I try to read at least 2 books a month, and I'm really heavy into like the sci-fi fantasy genre, but I'll mix it up every now and then and get into like young adult books or just regular contemporary literature. Like the latest Frederick Bachman book was amazing, phenomenal. Anxious People, you should read that. I finished that, I think, in November. 10 out of 10, great book.
Are you telling anxious people to read it, or the title is anxious
That's the
people?
title of the book. And it is also about anxious people. And I think anxious people would get something out of reading it because I am an anxious person and I definitely got a lot out of that book.
Well, hey, same. So good recommendation. Also, The Space Between Worlds is what you said it was called, the other book.
Yes.
Cool. Right on. So there's your slate of what we've been up to, which brings us to the quiz. And for the first time in what feels like decades, I am hosting this week. And wouldn't you know, Techtic, this is your chance if you want to be a karate master, because the quiz this week is about karate. You said you want to be good at karate. So we're just going to dive right into this. I have 5 questions and 1 tiebreaker, all of them Price is Right style. You know the drill. Remember that we are keeping a record this year of who wins and who loses, so there's a lot on the line here. First win on the line for one of you in 2021. So let's get right into it. Now, Techtic, you were in the karate ecosystem, so you might know some of these. You might have an advantage. I'm going to therefore have you go first. And we're going to start simple. How many karate belts are there?
Is a belt with stripes considered a new belt?
I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I'm going to have to count by my memory. 5.
Okay, Nerdbomber?
I feel like there's more. I'm going to say 6. I know that's shady.
I know
but
it's more. I know there is more. But
I'm gonna say 6 because you know what? You know what Cobra Kai taught me? First season at least, no mercy.
yeah,
Strike
but also
first.
have honor.
No, that was season 2. So relax.
I stroke first.
See, this is... we're getting into controversy right here, right away. So first of all, Nerdbomber is gets the point. It's actually 6, according to what I have in front of me.
Oh snap!
Do you have the colors? I wanted to see if I
do.
remember
I'm gonna-
correctly.
I'm gonna
I think I was
read them
missing
to you.
orange.
I have-
Let me read what I had. White,
Okay.
brown, black, red, yellow.
There is no red belt that I can see. So there's a very scientific way I got this answer. I Googled, how many karate belts are there? First result, 6 belts. White belt, orange belt, blue belt, yellow belt, green belt, brown belt, and black belt. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 belts. It literally, it's so funny. Everyone Google this at home, because if you Google how many karate belts are there, it says 6 belts, and then it lists 7 colors. Either way, Nerdbomber gets the point. But it's funny you mentioned, I remember a purple belt. Again, because I had a best friend who did it.
I
Either
wonder
way,
if
there's more than
each
5.
dojo is different. Like I
Well,
wonder,
there's
there's got to
also-
be like a national or international standard, but
I
I wonder if each
distinctly remember a
dojo is
red
different.
one.
Because like, hear me out. And maybe like the karate dojos of the world are going to come down on me. But at the end of the day, it's a business, correct? And if you stop progressing, why would you continue getting lessons? You know, like people go to lessons and stuff because they want to grow and continue to learn. And if they make more belt colors, even if it's not by international karate standards, if an individual lesson place or dojo has more colors than the international standard, then they can more slowly increment people and keep them coming back because it's a business, man.
Yeah, so just kind of clicking around on Google, what I can tell you for sure is that there's more than 5, and therefore, since Nerdbomber took kind of the jerk way out, she does get the point. And also saves us from controversy. This is very interesting, though. We're going to move on to the next question, hopefully, which will be less controversial. When did karate become an Olympic sport? What year is what I'm looking for? And Nerdbomber will go first.
I don't even know how long the Olympics have been around. I feel like it's been a while, and I don't even know. I think I'm going to go with 1950, but that could be totally off base. I really have no idea.
I'm going to go 1920.
Okay. This was a bit of a trick, guys. Nerdbomber gets the point simply because she is closest to the correct answer, which is 2021. This is going to be the first year that karate is an Olympic sport.
Really?
It was actually going to be 2020, but, of course, since the Olympics got pushed back to 2021, karate will become an Olympic sport in 2021. Up until then, it was not.
So you're telling me...
I said 2020.
You said 1920.
Oh, see.
You're telling me that table tennis is an Olympic sport before karate. That's crazy.
Absolutely correct. So, yeah, that's something.
Yo, can we watch that? We're going to watch that.
It's going to be interesting to watch, without a doubt. Now, in karate, I think in all forms of karate, but at least in the most popular form, there are things, and I'm going to try to pronounce all these things correct, called katas, which, Techtic, you might remember this. You took karate for a time. A kata is a series of standardized movements or forms that karate students use in order to practice offensive and defensive techniques without a partner. How many katas are there? Specifically, Shotokan katas.
I thought that there were 7 basic katas.
Okay, so you remember the term katas.
But I don't know if they're like numbers and those 7 were the foundation of the other ones. So I'm just going to go with 7.
Okay, Nerdbomber?
I swear if you say 8, I will cut you.
No mercy. 8. There's no rules when it comes to trivia. Fun.
There is no point in doing that because there are 26 in Shotokan karate. So Nerdbomber gets the point again, which means she wins. She kind of did you dirty there with guessing 8, but she could have guessed W and still would have gotten it right. So
did I get a clean sweep here?
Well, there's 2 questions left. You can go for the clean sweep, but
okay.
So far you are clean sweeping him, yes. These next 2 questions I'm particularly excited about, so I'm looking forward to these. We all know what a dojo is. I don't have to explain that term. It's a karate institution. How many dojos are there in America according to the very real site dojoinfo.com? Sorry, no, dojos.info is actually what this...
Dojos.info would never lie. And I'm going to say 3,200 dojos across the United States. I feel like there were probably more in like the 80s and the 90s.
Oh, there's way more than 3,200.
No, but I'm going to say that there's been hard times lately and some of them closed. And I'm not just saying like in the last year, but I'm
3,300.
This is based on 2014 data.
Okay. But I mean, even still, like, I feel like karate was super mainstream in like the 80s and 90s, and then it kind of scaled back a little bit.
Okay. Techtic gets the point. Clean sweep is dead. There are 21,128 martial arts schools in the United States. Nerdbomber, there's 1,400.
That felt like a charity.
There's almost 1,400 in Texas alone. There are over 1,400 in New York.
You know what? I guess
so right there, you're closing in on...
I figure there would be like maybe like 1 or 2 in each city or something like that. I don't know, man.
There are 2,643 in California.
Okay,
1,600 in Florida. I'm really enjoying saying these numbers to you. There's a lot of dojos in this country. I was
clearly very wrong. So sorry.
The clean sweep is dead. We're going to finish out anyways because I love this last question. The highest grossing martial arts movie, according to Hollywood Reporter. One of my favorite movies ever, by the way. Rush Hour 2. If you haven't seen Rush Hour 2 and Rush Hour 1, for what it's worth, they're really, really great. Highest grossing martial arts movie ever. What was its domestic box office gross?
$375 million.
Can I do a thing just to get his knickers in a knot? Can I please?
I mean, look.
You're going to do you, but you're going to...
I'll allow it.
So you said, what did he say?
I'm not telling you. Don't tell her.
Illegal. What did he
Don't
say?
tell her.
I have a
She's
right
not
to
paying
know.
attention.
I'm not going to tell you. Also, I was wrong. It's not domestic. It's worldwide. But either way.
I feel like it was like 370 something, so I'm going to say 380.
Okay, you both busted. Nice try, Nerdbomber, but it was 347.3 million.
I should have gone
US
$1.
It
I was
deserves
close.
to make so much more money
I was
than that.
closer.
It's an
Can we
amazing
play the
movie.
I was closer so I get the point?
Sure, if it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
So no clean sweeps, but Nerdbomber does get the point. For what it's worth, the tiebreaker, I won't ask it. I will just tell you. The star of Rush Hour 2, of course, Jackie Chan. How old is he now? He's actually 66 years old. Potentially aging out of the karate. But maybe you never
Mr.
age out.
Miyagi
Maybe
was
it's
old.
all within. Yeah, who knows? Either way, congratulations to Nerdbomber. I'm going to note this in my very official quiz tracker note. She is 1-0, folks.
Yeah, but she didn't win with honor.
Now that slides. So Techtic, you played against me last week, so that slides you to 0-2.
You better pick up the pace, Techtic, you know?
Okay,
you're going to
fine.
have to do something by the end of this year. Something is still up in the air, but you're going to have to do it.
Oh, are we talking? I didn't think we were
Techtic,
talking.
I did play you. I played you last week, right? I'm not
Yeah.
making that up.
Yeah, you swept him.
Yeah.
I gave him the last one because I didn't know there was going to be bonus points for the sweep.
It wasn't a bonus point. It's like a tiebreaker point. if
This
you
is
will.
this is straight up collusion. It's fine. I see how you guys are going to be.
We're just noting it for the record. But you're 0-2. You better get it together. Next week, Nerdbomber will host a quiz again. And next week, we will have some more content for you if you are so inclined to show up. We thank you so much for being here. Of course, go on over to Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review if you are so inclined. Hit us up on the Twitter sphere. Handles have already been mentioned. Let us know how life is in your neck of the woods. And thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next week.